Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Really looking forward to today's conversation with Adam Daines. Adam is the CEO of a very cool company called ADDA, ADDAinfusion.com. And ADDA is a consulting firm that offers HR, payroll, benefits and talent solutions. And their consulting services help HR departments and they complete complex specialized projects like implementing pay transparency or overseeing HCM software implementations. And they've got managed services as well to provide the administrative and strategic support of full HR, payroll, talent and benefits departments, and a whole lot more, which we're going to discover very shortly. But Adam, firstly, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. And I felt sorry, that's a mouthful. I need to streamline that on the service. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
And like me, you're an international man of mystery. You got an accent from one place, you live in another, and give us the quick snapshot before we get into ADDA.
Yep, I'm from the UK. A lot of people are here in the US where I'm resident. I've been here for about 15, 16 years. Still think I'm Australian, like you, I guess.
Oh, bless them.
If you hear the difference, you can definitely tell. I either get that or Boston and occasionally South Africa. But there's a little bit of a twang at the end. So that's where the confusion is. But I actually grew up a little bit in Asia, in Macau, spent most of my years in the UK, and then came across to the States about 15 years ago, just over 15 years ago.
And as a little side note for listeners, Macau is a wonderful spot, not too far from Hong Kong, right? With the pink buildings and quite a lot of casinos.
That's correct. It's called the Las Vegas of the East now. When I was there back in the 90s, it was definitely known for gambling, not at the stage. It was actually a Portuguese colony, handed back 2 years after Hong Kong was back to China. But yeah, it's still a really cool spot. It used to be 3 islands, but they've dredged them together almost. But yes, very cool place to visit. A lot of history there. It was fun to experience it.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. There's your tourist briefing for you today, listeners. So yeah, ADDA, an excellent consulting business, and you've got some great clients and stuff like that. And I know you're doing some very cool things for the future, but just could you take us back one step? You had quite a successful HR career. Can you give us the steps that led to the formation of ADDA and what triggered that move in the first place?
Honestly, it was like most great stories. It started with a bottle of wine. I just had a pretty rough day at work. Like we had all this stuff, the implementations for this new system we were putting in was going wrong. And then I had a couple of friends call me with their small businesses, and they were like, well, can you help us with this term? Can you help us with this? Or what state does this? What state? I said, can you just Google it? And they're like, we don't trust the source. We don't know where it's coming from. And I don't want to risk that. So I was just sat on the couch. I was like, all right, fine. So this happened quite a bit. And I took some notes down, and I realized that most of the people I knew that had small to medium-sized businesses, traditional consulting was too expensive. So some consultants in our space charge $250 up to $400 or $500, but small businesses just couldn't afford it. And then it was really running risks. So I was just having a stressful time, and I thought, you know what? I feel like I could do a business in this. And that is when ADDA was born. I was just sort of going there and sort of formed it to sort of be that sort of small to medium-sized business consulting firm, just advising. And that's really where it was. So I was at a consulting firm a little bit before that, after. But yeah, again, it just wasn't set up for small to medium-sized businesses. So that's how I set up with those in mind. And that's still primarily today, 80% of our clients are small, medium-sized enterprises or SMBs, depending on where you live.
So I think you ended your career at the sort of CHRO level. So, mid to large organization, that's quite a leap to then help just SMEs. Did you have a feeling or a nervousness before you launched that thought, well, maybe I should be serving the big end of town, or no, I'm going to focus on SMEs only?
What I decided to do was the managed services were going to go more towards SMEs, SMBs, and the consulting services, if we did large projects, would be obviously for enterprise level. Small, medium-sized businesses might use them, but I knew that if you're doing a full comp study or doing an analysis, it's more likely to be a large firm that would commission you to do it because it'll be expensive. Sure. Honestly, I just saw the market. So most of the businesses in the US are small to medium-sized businesses. In fact, that's probably arguably of any country, small to medium-sized businesses are the majority. And I just saw that a lot of them, when I looked at lawsuits and different things that they'd done and sort of reviews, they were overly exposed. So like the DOL, the NLRB, the EEOC, all those different acronyms for US, basically employment law enforcement, they would not say target, but a high proportion of the cases that they would go after would be small to medium-sized businesses. And the majority of people that would lose companies were small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
And that's just because they didn't have the paperwork tied up. They didn't have the formalities. They were, quote unquote, winging it until something happened, in which case they were trying to mitigate it. But that's what I saw. Like, the DOL going in at Coca-Cola, they've got 19,000 lawyers surrounding them before they even get to the situation. Whereas, a medium-sized business just doesn't have those kind of financial resources to try and fight it. And these fines can be quite large as well.
So then that takes us to ADDA itself. What kind of services are you providing? As I alluded or gave the outline at the start, but what kind of clients are you working with, and what are the main problems you're hearing these days?
So our client industry and genre, it ranges because the law impacts all. I would say that we do have primarily more work in traditionally the bluer states of the US, because there are more employee laws, there are more protections for the workforce than there are traditionally in red states. And that's just something that's evolved over time, whether right or wrong, depending on the side of the fence that you sit on.
Yeah.
So what do we see a lot that comes up is, at the moment, especially an uptick in wrongful dismissals or having issues at work or payroll issues. And the reason is employees are becoming more and more aware of their rights, what can happen, and how they have to interact, and the steps that have to go through in order to make certain decisions as a business owner. Whereas I think if you go back 20 years or even 10 years, we were pretty unaware as a workforce what our actual rights were. We trusted HR to inform us of the rights, but HR is also in predicament because we have to inform them of certain rights, but also protect the company and their rights. So I always found HR was a very interesting department because, you almost have to sit in two worlds, but ultimately you're being paid by one world, and you obviously have to try and protect the company as best you can, but without sort of, manipulating anything. But not everyone knew what their rights and details were. And I still see this today, is we still get people reach out to us independently to see if we can go after companies. And we're like, that's not what we do. We're not lawyers. We're HR professionals that outsource for companies. But that's where I see it now, because of the advent of Google and all these services and these online services for free. You definitely see an uptick in that. And in fact, even if you Google, I was terminated wrongly or experienced bullying at work, the first 4 slides that come up on the sponsored are no win, no fee lawyers. Like, those algorithms are tied in. And I actually told a client that, and he's like, no, they're not. And he Googled it, and it was like, no win, no fee, no win, no fee. Come see us. We'll make them pay. And I'm like, that's what's out there now. So I was like, before that wasn't the case, but now I definitely see more and more of it. There's probably, the latest stat I looked at, I think there's been a 40% increase in lawsuits in the United States from 2021 to 2024.
Brilliant marketing tactic, I have to say, by the way, coming up, showing what can go wrong. Like in the SEO world, the classic players go into a business and show a company, look, here's your competitors that are appearing at the top of Google. Whereas you're saying in this case, the results when someone says that they're wrongly dismissed or experiencing harassment in the workplace, it's always no win, no fee claims. And so when you're structuring an HR service, particularly for their SMEs, they've all got differing needs. And a lot of consulting firms, whether it's HR related or not, any industry, find it hard to offer the right packages for the right levels. How did you work out how to structure your services? And then, how will that evolve over time?
Well, what we did was we averaged out who would be on the account. So we sort of look at it. So if you're trying to build an HR consulting firm or looking at it, we copied the same model that you do in accounting, because I spend time in accounting firms and saw that they charge hourly, and it depends on who's on the job. So with HR, obviously, we couldn't command that kind of level. So what we did was we averaged out, for example, on a client, it may be 20% a director, 10% or 20% a manager, 30% a senior, and then the rest of it would probably be a junior member of staff doing the day-to-day things. So what we did was we did a blended rate, basically, on all the hourlies, and then came up with an hourly where we think it's going to be. So what we did was, on our first part of our business, and this is funny, we used to do set retainers. Every month, you do this, that's what it is, right? It backfired massively, because the one thing that you can never calculate is employee relations.
Yeah.
Because you could have a 20-person company that has all the problems in the world and everyone's yelling at each other and screaming, and you use mass amounts of time. And you have a 200-person company that has the best culture that you never have any issues. It was impossible for us to calculate. So what we did was, when we realized in our first evolution, I'll never forget it, we lost $6,000 in one client, theoretically because of the hours that we had to put into this thing to resolve it. And from that point on, I was like, this is too hard to predict. So we thought about cutting out employee relations. But then the problem is a lot of times you're being engaged is because of employee
That's
problems.
the big one. Yeah.
So what we did was we went to an hourly model. So we actually said, look, we're going to blend the rate. We're going to do an hourly. You're going to get notified every week where you are on the hours and let us know what you want to do. So we actually sort of marginalized it across. And that's how we've sort of operated ever since. And I know a number of our competitors and other people do the same sort of thing. It's just the easiest way to do it. You pay for what you need, you're informed of it, and then obviously you get the bill at the end of the month and you know exactly where it is. But yeah, we went totally to hourly and we were advised strongly against it. And I was like, we just can't predict it. Humans are too unpredictable. There's no way for us to plan where it's going to be. And it's not like there's an average, for example, in the winter, most people complain, or in the spring, you have the most issues. It's a free fall. You just never know when it's going to happen. And especially in recessions and harder times, people are more agitated and more nervous, and it does create more issues.
Yeah, you're right. You can't predict it. I remember once when I was an on-site HR person, and this guy came up to me, this old-timer, and his wife used to be in charge of payroll, and he found that the company payroll was shaving off 15 minutes per month and accruing personal time off, sick leave type stuff. But it was backdated. And so suddenly all these people are missing hours and hours. And so it nearly went to strike action. But how on earth are you going to predict that? So, that's interesting that you went to that model. What about the big change coming, AI and technological change, and how A, you service your clients and what they want, but B, to provide that in new ways? What are you thinking there? Is that going to be a challenge to the consulting world?
I think it will. And I actually went to a conference recently where a leader in AI was there. And if you listen to him, we'll all be, subjugated to robot rule in 2 years. But I don't think we're there quite yet. I have given a few speeches on this, and people are like, what does an HR guy know about AI? And we actually started building something because we saw it would replace it. So the day-to-day of maintaining HRIS systems, human resources, information systems, your pension systems, back and forth, PTO, time off, holidays, depending on where you're in the world. It takes a lot of time, but also routine questions. I guarantee I could survey 50 countries in the world of the HR department, what the most common question they get. It's probably going to be, how do I change my address? What do I got married? How do I add my kids? What do I do about this health insurance? It's very day-to-day questions because HRIS systems, were really designed for human resources people and the data, but then we give access to employees to do their stuff, but no one's really doing it. If I took 50 employees in any company and asked them to navigate the HRIS system, I guarantee a lot of them would not know what to do or how to do it. So a lot of them just pick up the phone or send an email, and HR generally is there to help with the issue. And that's completely fine, but it takes a lot of time up. Throughout my whole career, I've always heard HR wants a seat at the table. But usually there's very limited HR people, loads of admin work that needs to be done. And how do you get around to being strategic when you're buried in questions? So it was a frustration on both parts. But you've seen with HRIS systems and technology, it has moved that admin away, but not fully self-service yet. A lot of HRIS systems claim to be fully self-service. Yes, they can do it, but employees have no idea how to do it. So what we saw with that, and also handbook questions and policies and procedures, we actually started about 3 years ago building a database of legal stuff across the US. So all states, federal, we built it all in, started putting it together bit by bit, and we created a database. And the original idea was to create a call center of HR people that you could submit your handbook to as a company, and we would handle all the day-to-day questions for you for a fraction of the cost, right? And we were going to outsource it to Panama. Nearly every HR consulting firm has, or outsource has a site in India or the Philippines, or Panama now seems to be the new one in the US. That was the original idea. And then I happened to ask my brother, do you know anyone that can build something that's a bit more automated. And these guys were based out in Singapore. And I called them and they said, well, we could build you an AI app. And I was like, what does that mean? Like machine learning? And he's like, no, we can create a full one that will do it. He says, the technology is getting there. It's going to take a little while, like another year or two, but we firmly believe we'll be in a position. And last year we started testing. So we created MyHRaly, which basically one of the country's largest legal databases. We have put it up against several other systems, and we've been voted as having a better response, a more accurate response, but also easiest to understand. So we actually use two different methodologies on AI. But yeah, that's how I know a little bit about AI. I've been living and breathing it for 3 years. I finally produced something. HR people shouldn't be afraid of it. It's a database. So for example, if you're an HR generalist and you get asked a really complex question, you can ask the system the complex question and it will return the answer to you in a format that you can read and understand and implement. And if you're an employee, you can say to the system, change my address, and it will push through and change it. What's my holiday allowance? It will bring it forward. What's my paycheck looking like? Whatever it is, and it will tell you. But also you can ask any questions, from your handbook to your policies, procedures, and also the law. Now, with the law, people are asking, well, you're taking humans out of this thing. This is human resources. I totally agree. So what we've got is very complex issues or sensitive issues. The system will automatically transfer to a human. So if you're dealing with, bereavement or a birth or harassment or bullying or anything like that, it does put it to a human. So like we say that we're technology focused, but we're human led. At the end of the day, we're using this technology to speed up. So if you think about it, with tech and with AI, the HR teams have more time to spend with the employees, more time to spend within the culture of the company and really understanding it. And that's how we've positioned it. Now, if you don't have an HR department and you're using the app, you can bolt on any third-party HR firm, whether it be us or any. We're not restricting. So we can even load our competitors onto this system, and that's completely fine. Like the idea is to help companies protect themselves and inform themselves, but also to offer a much faster service. In our beta testing, it was funny. We asked employees, and they said it took almost like 2 days sometimes to get turnaround from HR. When they ask the question, it comes back in 15 seconds, and it's an accurate answer. So it's much quicker. It's accurate, but I will stress, because a lot of people are talking about AI and hacks and ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all these different things. Our system is closed, so it doesn't go on the internet. So there's no way to hack it because we're not on it. It's encrypted. It sits on AWS's EC2, like the top level with everything. But the most important thing is we don't search the internet for answers. So it's all in our own database, and each company can create its own ecosystem. So you can load up your own handbooks, libraries, whatever you want. We've created each ecosystem, and there's no bleed through because they're all separate. And I think the last thing to mention, which if you're a techie, which I have become, is the system doesn't hallucinate, which means in ChatGPT and the others, you'll see a sign saying it gets things wrong because it will take a guess. It will take a leap as to what it thinks you're asking. This system won't, because it's mostly legal policy, procedure, and handbook driven. We did not want that to happen. So if it doesn't know the answer, it will direct you to a human. It won't take a chance and answer the question, because we didn't want to take that risk. Because if it returns something wrong, then obviously there's a big liability with that. So the way we did it was, it does not take a guess. It will just pass you off to an HR person if it doesn't know. But yeah, I will tell you a funny story is it actually beat one of my HR consultants. Because in the US, there's a difference between, you have maternity leave, correct? In most countries, you've got some form of maternity leave. The US is not universal by any stretch, and some companies have it, some don't. There's actually no legal requirement unless you're in certain states where there are. It's a patchwork. But what we did was, we had a state where we had to do it and had a company where we had to do it. And we were looking at maternity leave, and the consultant came back and goes, the system's wrong. It's returning the wrong thing. This is not right. I said, well, what are they doing? I says, well, they're pregnant and they need to go on leave. I was like, oh, okay, let's have a look at this. I didn't really think about it either. But what the system had returned was the details. So when we asked for clarification from the system separated it, pregnancy leave versus maternity leave. There was two different ones, because one when you're currently pregnant, and one after you've given
Pre and
birth
post.
or
Yeah.
close to it. Yeah. So it was two very different laws depending on the stage of where you were. And we hadn't spotted that because we don't really think about pregnancy leave too much. It's always mat leave. It was funny. And we were like, oh, it's actually right, because it had quoted the pregnancy leave parts and the policies with that, not with the maternity leave, because there was a very clear handover in the guidelines. And we hadn't spotted it because our brains just automatically go to one way. So that was my favorite story of that, because I was like, yeah, this doesn't seem right. I'm pretty sure it's more than this. And when we actually looked at it, we're like, oh no, it's two different types of
It's a
leave.
segment. I love it. Gosh, that's an amazing tool, platform, software, future technology for the business you built there. I was laughing in there because twice in my career, I was on the end of those sort of phone lines. When I was in my university studies, I was on a thing called Wage Line, where anyone, employer, employee, could phone up with any question randomly from across the region I was in. And I would usually put them on hold and then furiously look up the laws and legislation and scream across the room, does anyone know the answer to this one? So quality and speed perhaps were at risk there while I was still doing my studies. And then later on, I was in a company of maybe 80 or 100,000 employees worldwide, and we would get employee relations stuff about corporate policies. And man, I think a tool like that would have been phenomenal. And then you've mentioned that it was, I think the term might be walled. So that means that, yeah, it's not necessarily trawling the internet to find answers. You've got all this proprietary information, or you've accessed databases and stuff, added that to it. And then each client or company can then upload their documents, their procedures, their policy statements, things like that, even training sessions, I'm guessing, so that it returns an answer. Is that right?
Well, yeah, the app is more than just a chat function. That's the gold star on it. So what we actually have on the side is a feed as well. So you can put all company information, things that come up. People can like it, they can engage it. CEOs and leadership, whoever can put stuff on it, you can like and engage. It's a full interactive feed. The second part is the chat function. And the last part is a library. So if you build a library of all the stuff from training to videos to anything, the AI system will access that as well. The AI system will access any information that you want it to. So if you turn on library information or feed information, you could write what happened on the feed with this chat, and it will bring up the information. So the library is really good, especially if you want a single source. So when we did our beta testing, we had a fun section. And that's the reason why I mentioned recipes, is because someone's like, load up your favorite recipe. And then we put recipes, and we had policies and procedures. So we had the full benefits manual. So if you're in the US and you got the full benefits, you can type in a question and ask about it. So does my insurance cover emergency rooms or what? And it will come back with the answer. So you don't have to look through 50 pages of information, but also with handbooks. I don't know about you, but some are bordering on Bible level of pages and detail. And it's often hard to navigate and find. And if you find me 10 employees that have read the manual, one, I won't believe them, but two, I'll happily hand them each $100, because there is no way that anyone's read it. I mean, even I that wrote them, I don't always read them because they're just very long. So we've tried to make them more fun to read, but ultimately talking about travel policy or per diems is
They're
not
really good
really
for propping
that
the
fun.
door open. Yeah.
So it's a way to access the information without having to read through all the information. You just ask a question, like type in a text message. You type it in and it answers it straight back to you with the details. It's a whole ecosystem, from a library to a chat function, which can pull from multiple sources through to your feed. But again, with the ecosystem is each company has their own sort of container. So even though every company can access our legal database, each of the other segments that the AI is instructed to pull from will be uniquely your own. And also with the legal database, we can reduce it or increase it. So for example, some companies were like, well, actually, I'd rather them come to our HR team on medium to hard HR issues. So we've restricted the legal database to more easy run-of-the-mill stuff. And some companies have said, well, actually, now give them untethered full access to it, because I'd rather them read it from a trusted source than Google it and then get hooked in by a lawyer, or maybe misunderstand the law and it causes more issues. So that's where we are. So we're able to fully customize it. But it is kind of cool asking a question. If you're based in Florida, for example, and you ask a question about Seattle employment, it's kind of cool when it returns the whole answer. Or if you're terming someone, some states you have to pay immediately, some's the next payroll cycle, some have all different things. So if you're based in one state, you may not know the rules of another one, especially with a remote workforce.
Definitely.
Like
Yeah.
remote workforce, we've gone everywhere, and you may not know the local laws. So having this system really does sort of cover those bases, which is kind of good.
That's very cool. Yeah, I love that. I love that. From a business perspective, you know that movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. With this, what are you doing? Are you building it and hoping they come, or are you getting customer feedback as you build? What's the process so that it becomes a revenue center? What's the plan?
It's a good question. Well, when I was building it, I was so nervous that I might, one, miss out, or two, people just wouldn't want it, right? It would be like, nah, it's just not right. So what I did was, as we were building and testing the concept of the idea, I was meeting with HR professionals and meeting with business owners and employees that I knew. And all of them returned the same feedback. Was the employers were worried, well, I don't want them to have too much access to legal, or is it dangerous to have too much access to legal? HR was like, well, is this going to take my job? Like, what's going on here? And the employees are like, well, it's sort of not really that human-y. They were the initial concerns. So we're like, all right, so let's build this in a different way. So, speaking to business owners about access to like this legal database, it's like, well, it can be shifted. But if you think about it, and I painted this picture, you have a situation, let's just say, for example, sexual harassment's happened within your company. And now you have no HR or limited HR. They don't not really trusted, or something's happened, and the employee's Googling this. And then now they get, yeah, you can win $1 million payouts of this. And it's like, so, okay. And then you've got a law firm. So now this employee for no fee contacts a law firm, and now you're challenging this. Or if there's a complaint to any one of the US bodies that govern this, you've now got someone went straight out there. Now, if we answered it within the chat and said, actually, this is a really contentious issue, we really want to pass you to an expert to talk about this, and let's find out what we can do. If we can maintain it and manage it and do the right thing internally before it gets external, once it goes external, that's when it becomes expensive. And that's when the spotlight's on you. But if we're internal, we should be able to do it. And then with HR as well, I was explaining to them, it's like, it's not replacing your job. It's freeing you up to do what HR's always wanted to do, which is be strategic, add value, do human capital planning, and actually drive the business through growth. Because the business growth is $5 million over the next couple of years. You're going to need people to generate $5 million of extra revenue, and you're going to need the right people. So have you done a skills gap analysis? Have you done any of these other different things, which are super cool to do, by the way? They're really fun. Yeah. Like, have you done comp studies, skill gap analysis, forecasting? And the answer is no, because you're usually bogged down, like you say, on the phone calls going, how can I help you? You want to buy pet insurance? That's cool. So then
change
you're
your
like,
address, yeah.
Yeah, I'll change your address. It's like, you move $3 down. Excellent. Yeah. Those interactions, although are meaningful, the touch points, I'd argue that the human interaction of when someone really needs you and they really need a human would be more impactful. So, for example, bullying, racial discrimination, sexual harassment, a bereavement, anything along those lines where they just need to talk to someone. I think if you have that time freed up, you can spend more time doing that. You can spend more time in your culture. And for employees as well, when we finally tested the product, we had a 95% approval rate. The only reason we didn't have the full is a couple of people didn't have cell phones, and they didn't like the idea of talking to a computer, which I get.
Pretty rare.
There's only so much I can do about that. And I think it's also a generational thing. But overall, people were happy with the system because it was immediate, it was accurate, it was private, so it was coming straight back, and they didn't have to wait or worry about something. But after every single chat, it's like, if you're not happy, do you want to ask again? Or do you feel this needs a human touch? And if they say yes, you can click on it and book a meeting in your HR person's calendar straight away. So there's no calling up and trying to figure out when you're both free. You can just book a meeting in and obviously put the topic. So that's how we counteract it. It was like keeping the human touch in it, but also explaining to people that this is, I hate to put it lack of a better word, AI is coming regardless of if we want it to or not, right? And at the end of the day, it does help us speed. Kids are using it to write their dissertations. There's now even software to help counteract the AI finding software. So when you write something with AI, you can upload it to another one, which will change it, which will skirt the university's AI detection software. It's like an arms race, right? And at the end of the day, as a lot of innovation and revolutions would come, I think the downturn in the market coming, as what IMF said today, I think this will speed up the adoption of AI-generated and automated tools, because it's going to become very, very expensive and hard to maintain labor costs as the global economy is shifting up and down. So I think this will speed it, just like COVID sped up remote working. I think economic pressures will push more people to take a chance with AI and take a chance with these automated systems, just simply because of economic purposes. And then once you've used them for a year or so and obviously become used to them, even if the economy was to take a boom, the chances of you going back and saying, yeah, I'd like to spend another $120,000 on an HR manager when you're paying a fraction of that cost to AI. But what I would say is with HR teams that are currently right now is it will make you more effective. And like I said, we have tested this with HR professionals and they love it. Like, the information's at their fingertips. They can ask strategy questions. They can ask policy questions, can ask, different things. And it's just right there for them, helping you to operate at a higher level than maybe what you might have been able to do.
The analogy might be, look, when you're at college, you were given a textbook, let's call it HR, an HR textbook. And at the moment, you're stuck on chapters 1, 2, maybe 3. There's all these other chapters of cool things you could be working on, some cool projects, change that you could be making, but you're stuck on the early admin stuff, which is bogging you down. So here's a way of getting past that. And then I can imagine with the product itself that as it iterates, that you mentioned that for some of the more tricky or troublesome areas, that it will sort of automatically send them through to the person, and that it might then prepare that HR person with almost like a case file. Or if you've seen the shows where the politician's about to meet people, they pass them a little palm card of the key facts. It could be preparing them for, here's the background legislation you need to be aware of in that state, and here's that person's longevity in the company, which might say that they've crossed a certain threshold, so they're better at doing their jobs as well. I can imagine it could be serving the HR person as well as the user. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a back office, which I haven't mentioned yet. So we've got a front app, which people can engage online and through their mobile devices. But on the back end for HR and admins, so you got a librarian, which can do the library information. You got the feed master, which double checks. So you can't just post anything you want on the feed. There is an approval process that goes with that. But on the chat feature, so when an HR person's been engaged to come on because they have to take over the conversation, it does actually give them a chat history. So we can see all the history, but not only of that conversation, it gives a history of every conversation had with AI, with that person individual. So it will track it all the way back. So then what it will do is, based on the conversation, it will summarize it and give an opinion to the HR person of what it thinks is going on. But then ultimately the HR person reads it and makes the determination themselves. But the best thing about it is, even if it doesn't go through to an HR person, if the question is asked, I feel unsafe at work, or what is the definition of harassment at work, it triggers HR to initiate a phone call with that individual. So it will trigger a touch point to try and resolve it, even if they've not followed through. It will help them there. And also, even if they haven't gone through or there's a light thing, the chat system can actually pull things together. So for example, in a department, say there's multiple people have been complaining about the same thing, or there seems to be a higher level complaints in one area, it will flag it to HR that there seems to be a number of issues in this department and they seem to be the same issues or around the same area. And it allows HR to look at it to sort of like look more in depth to see what's going on. The idea of this was to stop problems before they escalate and become issues. So if you can find stuff as it's starting to simmer, it's much easier to resolve and parties don't get heated, but also you don't have to make some drastic decisions if you can get hold of it early enough and make corrective behavior or correct the situation. It could be a lot of people are complaining about the health and safety gear, or 3 people have been burnt. Like, it will start to track and make an algorithm and obviously produce charts. So HR can look at all this stuff and, paint a picture of what's going on. And it is all put together for them and reportable. So yeah, it's very easy to access all that data, and also just how people interact with the company as well. So like when you look at the feeds, you look at the libraries, if people are really engaged, and they will, but you can also tell if people are not engaged. So it really helps with stay interviews. Like, talent acquisition is massive at the moment. You're looking for great people. You don't want to lose the people that you really want to stay. So this can help you identify people also that may be a little bit less motivated to be at the company. So it's a great tool because there's a lot of data that comes out of it in how they interact, what they use, how they do this stuff. So it paints a picture of what's going on and it helps you out there. So yeah, that's why it's great for HR teams and businesses to get all that data.
Good for predictive indicators, and you're not just sitting around waiting for the next quarterly or annual employee survey or something like that. You're constantly getting data coming through. What's your plan for actually getting the word out there about MyHRally as well as ADDA's consulting arm? This is a new product. So what are you going to do to get the word out there and get new customers, clients using the platform?
Well, I thought about standing at the top of a mountain and yelling it, but realized that was probably going to be, ineffective.
Sorry.
But we're actually pursuing two different types, which is interesting because I've not been in this position before. So we're actually going to, start with an advertising campaign directly. But what we found is strategic partners may be the best option. So, for example, we can talk about TriNet, or we could talk about, Cigna Health Insurance, or we could talk about ADP, for example. Any one of those big firms. So a big payroll company or HRIS company, they're probably going to be one of the biggest partners for us, to release this. Or medical insurance here in the US, if you think about it. And that's just because of one, of the sheer number of users, but two, a lot of HR payroll companies offer a 1-800 number for, their services, or shipped out to India or wherever it is, right? It's not always the best solution, and it's hard to get a hold of, and you get a different person every time. So by putting this system in place, you're able to link all the systems together, but two, you're able to now hone in your HR yourself, and obviously they'll be saving money with all these different teams they have to employ. So they can actually now potentially upskill the people they have, maybe reduce the team a little bit, but provide more meaningful impact. Or the employee can maybe move it across. But that's sort of where we're seeing it as a differential between these HRIS systems, but also providing all this information and data. It helps govern it with what's going on.
That's a smart approach. And a lot of HR tech firms, they might go down the channel partners, which is the consulting firms referring them into their clients. But certainly a tech integration is the most scalable method. And certainly if you can connect the back end so that it just happens automatically, whether that's on the back end of a marketplace, it's just one of the icons there that they turn it on, turn it off. That's the dream scenario where it's very, very easy for the customers and clients to use it. But yeah, definitely teaming up with other tech firms. I've seen that work time and time again. So that's an excellent idea. So final thoughts as to the future of HR. And we haven't really talked too much about the consulting side of things, but is this going to affect the consulting business longer term?
I think it will. I think consulting will become more specialized. I think a lot of the managed side will be, replaced eventually with AI. But I mean, even with our service, we've just launched one called ADDA Virtual. And that's simply because it's an online chat feature, with Slack. What we do is we have a basic all the way through to premium, but it's a monthly pick a mix version. So you pick what you want. I get it because HR consulting can be expensive. And if you're not big enough yet or you're a startup. But what I'd say to a lot of people is, whether it be the virtual service, which is more, covering you for compliance, that, or you go for our traditional offering, which is, the full managed services. What we have to remember is this is what I would say to all HR people or people considering HR is HR may seem expensive if you're paying, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000 in consulting, $50,000, whatever it is, right? But one lawsuit is pretty much about there. That's all it takes is you're gambling on 1 year's worth of paying to an HR firm in exchange for one lawsuit. Like I said before, we've seen an uptick of just over 41%, from 2021 to 2024. And we've also seen an uptick in employment authorities within government looking at small, medium-sized businesses and looking at their compliance just because of stuff. But that's what I'd say is, HR is more than just admin and pushing in paper. It really is a strategic function. And consulting, I think, will change with the advent. I think all services, whether it be marketing services, SEO services, accounting services, anything that provides a service like that, which is technically based, black and white, I think will be very easily replaced. I think the ones that will be harder, which is where the nuance is creative or making a judgment call. I think that still will be with us for a very long time. So that's why we split it, because when you're looking at these very emotional, strong issues, I really do feel it takes a human eye to still look at it and make a judgment call. And sometimes that, hate to say it, like that gut feel of what's going on is very different to what it can sometimes look like. We're nowhere near on AI yet. We're making that gut feel. Even though you look at all the evidence and this is presenting, something just doesn't seem right. That's where I think we're going to still keep consulting, because a lot of consulting within HR is nuanced. And it is it's a feeling based on experience and what you've seen in the past. It's not always black and white.
And the other thing that people don't often talk about on the consulting side of things is that it's all about protection and minimizing risk and compliance and so on. But out of that, especially for consulting firms that are working with different clients and different locations and situations, they have so many learnings on how to improve a business. Because same with customer service, if you have an angry customer and you can turn them around and fix things, they become your most loyal customers because they're so pleased with the way you've cared and helped them. It's the same with consulting in the HR world. You might fix an angry employee dispute or something like that, but suddenly you now have new trust and you can actually boost employee engagement stuff. So there are learnings and opportunities beyond just let's check the boxes and protect the business and avoid risk. There are great ways to make your business stand out. We've covered a lot of great stuff here, both about ADDA and MyHRally. If people want to learn more about either parts of the business or about you and your background, what should they do next?
They can go to our website and if you book a consultation, right now you get me. I have put my body where my mouth is. I've told the team, they should be on there talking to people and doing it. And they sort of said to me, well, how about you do it? So now all the consultations for a limited period of time are going to be coming solely to me. So when you do book a meeting, you will get me. So I firmly believe you can't ask other people to do it unless you've done it. And I was asking people to take consultations and do their job and, their main core part. So now I am taking all the consultations at the moment. So I've been punished. So now if you come on, it will be me. So if you go on the website and book a consultation, you'll see us. And then obviously within the services, if you want to know more about MyHRally, you book it in through ADDA and just contact us. The website for MyHRally will be up soon. The promotional videos are all out there. So you got the first sneaky peek of that one. It hasn't been announced in the media or anything yet. So that is actually the first time we're doing it. We've just finished all the testing and the beta testing and all those different people. So a
follow-up question. You mentioned that there's nothing stopping other firms using MyHRally, as in other consulting firms in the HR space. Is that true? Like, is it potential for a white label thing in the future that they could upload their documentation and the client stuff, or is it mostly through ADDA itself?
Anyone can use it. So we've actually separated the businesses. The idea behind it was that we thought about enforcing us, right? But then it wouldn't really truly be independent. So what we've done is we've actually said that if you have a consulting firm or anyone else doing it, they can upload their information and do it. It is a completely separate company, even though both are owned by the partners. It is a completely separate company. Any HR consulting firm, any outsourced firm, anything like that can bring their clients. They can sign up and use it, and it's completely separate. So it's a good idea to stress that. It's like we're not out there to get any clients or something. That is a completely separate product from what we are doing. And the reason we've done it is because we want to push MyHRally out there, and we felt that the best way to do it was to allow freedom of everyone to be able to go on the platform.
Open source almost, if you like, or that kind of philosophy anyway. Could you call out the website again for people listening?
So it's ADDAinfusion.com. So it's just www.ADDAinfusion. Our doing business name is ADDA, as you've probably seen. And I will tell you that I tried to get ADDA as a website, but the guy wanted $500,000. So we just said, we'll be ADDAinfusion.com, but we'll do a DBA as ADDA. So if you type ADDA Infusion or ADDA HR, we will come up in Google.
Brilliant. Well, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your story, both of the consulting and of the future in MyHRally. And I commend you for having seen the future and then making it happen, get the product built and getting it out there. So all the best with it in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks, and see you next time.